You woke up early. You worked late. You checked your bank account 3 times today hoping the number changed. It did not. Here is the truth nobody is telling you. Working harder is not the problem. The problem is that all that effort, all that strain, all that checking and chasing is actually standing between you and the wealth that already belongs to you. Neville Goddard called it interfering with the seed. He said the moment you plant an assumption in your imagination, the moment you truly feel yourself as wealthy, as secure, as free, that seed is alive. It is growing. And every anxious action, every desperate hustle, every fearful calculation you make after that moment is you digging it up before it can bloom. Stop digging. Tonight, you are going to learn something that will feel strange at first. You are going to learn how to create wealth by doing absolutely nothing. Not laziness, not passivity, but a specific, deliberate, sacred mental posture that Neville Goddard called entering the Sabbath. And it is the most powerful financial move you will ever make. Stay with this. Let us start with the wound. You have been told your entire life that wealth comes from effort. More hours, more hustle, more grinding. And that belief is so deeply embedded in the modern mind that questioning it feels almost dangerous, almost irresponsible. But stop and look at your life honestly. How many people do you know who work themselves into exhaustion and still cannot get ahead? And how many people do you know, or know of, who seem to attract money effortlessly, as if it flows toward them without strain? What is the difference? Neville Goddard gave a very clear answer. He taught that the outer world, including money, circumstances, and opportunities, is nothing more than a projection of your inner state. The physical world does not create your financial reality. Your consciousness creates it. And action, while it has its place, is never the cause. It is always the effect. He wrote that imagining creates reality. Not working hard creates reality. Not networking creates reality. Imagining creates reality. This means that if you are spending 12 hours a day in physical effort while your inner assumption remains one of lack, you are simply laboring in the wrong direction. You are pushing the cart without ever changing the horse. Here is where the first transformation begins. Most people treat the word Sabbath as a religious calendar event, a day off, a Sunday obligation, a rule about rest. But Neville Goddard, drawing from his deep study of Scripture as psychological truth, revealed something entirely different. He taught that the Sabbath is not a day at all. It is a mental state. It is the state of completion, the state of already done. In the book of Genesis, when the divine mind completed creation, it rested, not because it was tired, but because there was nothing left to do. The work was finished. The reality was established. The Sabbath was the recognition of a completed fact. Neville Goddard applied this directly to manifestation. He taught that when you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, when you genuinely occupy the state of already having what you desire, the only appropriate response is rest. Not worry, not action, rest. He said your task is not to work toward your desire. Your task is to live from inside it, as if the thing you want has already settled into your life and become ordinary. Think about what that means for your finances right now. If you are constantly calculating how the money will arrive, planning the steps, monitoring for signs, chasing every opportunity out of fear, you are not resting in completion. You are broadcasting the signal of lack. And the universe, which Neville Goddard described as a mirror of infinite fidelity, simply reflects that signal back to you. The Sabbath does not negotiate. It simply says, the work is finished, the wealth is mine, and there is nothing left to pursue because I have already arrived at what I was looking for. That is not laziness. That is the most advanced financial strategy in existence. Listen carefully now. The reason you have not yet received what you want is not that you have not worked hard enough. It is that you have not yet rested in the assumption of having it. You have been planting and digging, over and over, never allowing the seed to take root. Tonight, that pattern ends. Neville Goddard told a story, one of his most instructive, about a friend who desperately wanted a specific sum of money. This person was anxious, calculating every possible avenue, spending days consumed by the problem of how the money would arrive. And nothing was working. Neville sat with this person and said something simple and staggering. He said, "Stop trying to figure out the how. The how is none of your business." That sentence alone has freed more people than most financial advice ever will. Here is what Neville meant. He taught that when you plant a seed in the ground, you do not stand over it deciding how it will grow. You do not design the roots. You do not schedule the sunlight. You trust the intelligence within the seed to do what it was created to do. Your job is to plant it. Water it once with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then walk away. He called this dropping the seed. To drop the seed means to impress a vivid, emotionally rich assumption into your subconscious mind, and then release all attachment to the method of its fulfillment. You do not manage the delivery. You receive the delivery. Neville Goddard was explicit on this point. He said the subconscious mind is infinitely more intelligent than the conscious mind. When you hand your desire to the subconscious through the feeling of its fulfillment, you are activating a creative intelligence that operates on a level far beyond what your logical mind can plan or execute. This is not metaphor. This is mechanics. Now here is where it becomes extraordinary. Neville Goddard introduced a concept he called the bridge of incidence. He described it this way. Once you have entered the state of the wish fulfilled, events in the outer world will begin to reorganize themselves into a sequence that leads you, step by step, to the physical manifestation of your desire. You will not see the full staircase. You will only ever see the next step. The bridge of incidence is the universe honoring your assumption. It might look like an unexpected phone call, a conversation that opens a door, an idea that arrives at 3 in the morning, a person you had not spoken to in years who suddenly reaches out with an opportunity. None of these things look like magic from the outside. They look like coincidence. But Neville Goddard said, there is no coincidence. There is only your consciousness reshaping the world around you. Here is the instruction that changes everything. When the bridge of incidence begins to appear, your only job is to follow the steps as they present themselves without needing to understand the entire plan. Trust is not passive. Trust is an active, courageous willingness to move on what is revealed without demanding a guarantee of what comes next. Most people break their own manifestation right here. They see the first step of the bridge, and instead of stepping onto it with confidence, they pause. They analyze. They ask whether this really makes sense, whether it is logical, whether it is safe. And in that moment of hesitation and doubt, they collapse the very structure their imagination built. Neville Goddard reminds us that the infinite intelligence that created worlds does not need your management. He taught that your wealth is not waiting to be created. It is waiting to be recognized. It already exists as a completed fact. The bridge of incidence is simply the mechanism by which what is already true in consciousness becomes visible in the physical world. Let that land for a moment. Your financial freedom is not a future possibility. It is a present reality in the unseen dimension of consciousness. Your work is not to earn it. Your work is to believe it, feel it, and then get out of the way. There is a passage in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 11, in which a man knocks on his neighbor's door at midnight, asking for bread. The neighbor refuses, but the man continues knocking with such persistent, almost shameless boldness that the neighbor finally rises and gives him everything he needs, not because of their friendship, but because of what the King James Bible calls his importunity. Neville Goddard loved this passage. He called this quality brazen impudence. Pause here. This matters. Brazen impudence, as Neville taught it, does not mean aggression or arrogance in the outer world. It means a fierce, unapologetic refusal to let the evidence of your physical senses override the truth of your assumption. The senses will tell you that you are broke. Brazen impudence does not argue with the senses. It simply refuses to accept them as the final word. When the bank account shows a number that frightens you, the practice is not to pretend the number is different. It is to recognize that the number belongs to yesterday's assumption, and what you are building right now belongs to something newer, something that has not arrived yet in the physical, but is already fully formed in the only place that matters. This is one of the most radical and liberating teachings in all of Neville Goddard's body of work. He taught that every physical condition you are currently experiencing is not your present reality. It is your past assumption made visible. The world you see today was created by the beliefs you held yesterday, which means the world you will see tomorrow is being created by the assumptions you hold right now. You are always living in the echo of your own imagination. Brazen impudence is the willingness to look your current circumstances directly in the eye and say, without flinching, "This is not the truth. The truth is what I have assumed." Now we arrive at the gateway, state akin to sleep, known by those who study Neville Goddard's work simply as SATs. This is one of the most precise and powerful techniques he ever taught, and it is the door through which the Sabbath is entered every single night. Here is how it works. As you drift toward sleep, the part of your mind that argues with everything starts to go quiet. Not all at once. It loosens slowly, like a fist that finally stops squeezing. And right there, in that soft in-between place, the subconscious is open in a way it never quite is during the day. It does not push back. It just receives, fully and completely. Neville Goddard taught that this state is a direct channel to infinite intelligence. It is the moment when your imagination speaks most powerfully to the creative medium of the universe. His instruction was precise. In the state akin to sleep, construct a short, vivid scene that implies your wish is already fulfilled. Not a scene of wanting it. Not a scene of hoping for it. A scene of having it. Living it. The feeling of it in your body. Feel the texture of financial peace. Feel the relaxation in your chest when you know the bills are handled. Feel the lightness of looking at your account and smiling. Feel what it feels like to say, quietly and honestly, "I am taken care of." Then hold that feeling. Let it fill the space between waking and sleeping, and surrender into sleep from within that feeling. This is the planting. This is the Sabbath. By entering sleep from within the state of fulfilled assumption, you hand the impression directly to the subconscious without interference. You bypass every doubt, every counter-argument, every limiting belief your conscious mind might otherwise raise. And the subconscious, faithful and tireless, begins immediately to reorganize your outer world to match the inner impression it has received. Neville Goddard was clear that you do not need to repeat this hundreds of times. One clear, emotionally saturated impression delivered in SATs is sufficient to set the creative process in motion. Do not underestimate tonight. The session you complete as you close your eyes in the next few hours may be the moment your financial reality begins to shift. not because of anything you will do tomorrow, but because of who you will be when you wake up. Here is where we must be completely honest with you. The greatest enemy of your manifestation is not doubt. It is not fear. It is not even limiting belief in the traditional sense. The greatest enemy is the compulsion to do something. We live in a culture that worships activity. Busyness is a badge of honor. Rest is treated as failure. And so even among people who intellectually understand Neville Goddard's teachings, the moment they plant their assumption, they immediately reach for their phone, open their email, refresh their social media, and start looking for signs that it is working. Every check, every calculation, every anxious revisit tells the subconscious that the assumption was never real to begin with. You planted something and then stood over it with a shovel, wondering why nothing grew. Neville Goddard taught a principle he called good abandonment. And supporting authority, Joseph Murphy echoed this same truth in his landmark work, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, when he wrote that what you consciously impress upon the subconscious must then be released completely. If you keep returning to examine whether your prayer was answered, you are implying it has not been. And the subconscious, which takes all impressions literally, obediently manifests that implication. Good abandonment is not giving up on your desire. It is giving up your anxiety about your desire. It is the difference between a farmer who plants seeds and then goes about his life with confidence, and a farmer who plants seeds and then spends every night digging them up to see if they have sprouted. One of them will have a harvest. The other will have only empty hands and a body worn down from pointless effort. Apply this to money right now. After tonight's SAT session, your job is done. You do not need to strategize in the morning. You do not need to figure out which opportunity to pursue. You do not need to check your account every hour. The infinite intelligence that governs all things has received your instruction. Trust it the way you trust your heart to beat while you sleep. Now we come to one of the most electrifying teaching moments in all of Neville Goddard's life. He spoke often of his teacher, Abdullah, a brilliant and mysterious figure described as an Ethiopian rabbi who mentored Neville during his early years in New York. Abdullah was utterly uncompromising in his instruction, and one lesson above all others shaped Neville's understanding of the law. Neville wanted to travel to Barbados to visit his family, but had no money for the fare. He told Abdullah about his desire, and Abdullah did something unexpected. He looked at Neville and said simply, "You are in Barbados. Not, you will be. Not, you should save for it. You are there." Neville was confused. Abdullah refused to entertain the confusion. He closed the conversation. And every time Neville came back with more worry, more problem-solving, more questions about how he would get there, Abdullah did the same thing. He slammed the door. This is Abdullah's lesson. Once you have spoken the truth of your assumption into existence, there is nothing left to discuss. Every time you revisit the problem, every time you reopen the question of how, you are undoing the declaration. You are implying the assumption was not real. You are returning to the state of lack. Abdullah refused to join Neville in his doubt. He held the assumption on Neville's behalf with absolute, non-negotiable certainty. The result? Within weeks, without any logical sequence of events he could have planned, Neville found himself on a ship to Barbados. The how had arranged itself through a series of circumstances he could never have engineered alone. That is the bridge of incidents made personal. That is what happens when you slam the door on doubt and hold your assumption with brazen, unapologetic certainty. Now, bring this to your finances. How many times this week have you reopened the door on your own lack? How many times have you revisited the problem, retold the story of not enough, returned to the worry? Every time you do, you are undoing the seed. Tonight, you slam the door, and you do not open it again. You have traveled far tonight. You began in the exhaustion of effort. You discovered that effort without aligned assumption is motion without direction. You learned that the Sabbath is not Sunday. It is the mental state of a completed creation, the state of already done. You were shown how to drop the seed through ersatz, how to use the threshold of sleep as a direct line to the subconscious mind. You were armed with brazen impudence, the fearless refusal to be moved by appearances. You were taught the art of good abandonment, releasing the how while holding the what with unwavering certainty. And you heard Abdullah's door slam shut on every doubt that tried to return. Now we arrive at the moment of commitment. Metaphysical resolution. Wealth is not a reward for labor. It is a reflection of consciousness. Every financial condition in your outer world is a projection of an inner assumption. Change the assumption, and the outer world must change. This is not wishful thinking. This is law. Neville Goddard called it the law of assumption. He staked his entire life and body of teaching on it, and thousands upon thousands of people across decades have validated it through their own lived experience. You are not trying to attract wealth tonight. You are recognizing wealth as your natural state and removing every layer of interference that has been hiding it from view. The Sabbath is available to you right now. Before you sleep tonight, do this. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Enter the state akin to sleep. And in that quiet, golden threshold between waking and dreaming, construct one scene, just one. That would be true if your financial desire were already fulfilled. Maybe it is opening your banking app and seeing a number that makes you exhale with relief. Maybe it is telling someone you love that everything is handled. Maybe it is simply the feeling of peace in your body, the deep cellular calm of a person who knows they are provided for. Feel it. Let it be real for 30 seconds. Then surrender into sleep from within that feeling. That is the entire practice. That is the Sabbath entered. Do not check for results in the morning. Do not analyze the dream you had. Do not look for signs. Slam the door, as Abdullah taught, and go about your day as a person who has already handed their request to the greatest creative power in the universe. Because you have. A final word on the deeper truth beneath all of this. Neville Goddard was not simply teaching a self-help technique. He was revealing the mechanics of a universe created by and sustained through consciousness itself. He drew from the scriptures, from the writings of the visionary poet William Blake, from the mystical depths of ancient wisdom, to show us that imagination is not a faculty we possess. Imagination is the very nature of God operating through us. When you imagine with feeling, you are not pretending. You are participating in the act of creation itself. This is why the Sabbath is sacred, not as a religious obligation, but as a recognition of what Neville Goddard taught us is the deepest truth available to human beings. That the I Am within you is the creator of your world. That your assumption is your prayer. And that your rest in the fulfilled state is the ultimate act of faith. You are not waiting for wealth. Wealth is waiting for the moment you stop refusing it with your doubt. Enter your Sabbath tonight. If this teaching has opened something in you, if something shifted as you listened, then you already know that what Neville Goddard taught was not philosophy. It was experience. And there is more waiting for you. Subscribe to the Goddard Code right now. Join a growing community of people who are done chasing and have chosen instead to claim. Every video on this channel is built to carry you deeper into the law, deeper into the practice, and closer to the life your imagination has already created for you. The community is here. The teaching is alive. And your seat at the table has always been ready. We close tonight with the words of Neville Goddard himself. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and observe the route that your attention follows. Your route has already begun. Walk it without fear.